You know that feeling, right? You walk into a room and you're just convinced, absolutely convinced, every single eye is locked onto you. Maybe you, I don't know, stumbled a tiny bit getting through the door, or you've got this minuscule coffee spot on your shirt.
Yeah, or your hair's doing that weird thing it does sometimes.
Exactly. And you feel it's just glaringly obvious, that hot, awkward flush, like there's a giant theatrical spotlight just pointing right at you.
It's such a common feeling, isn't it? Almost universal.
It really is. And today on the deep dive, we're actually going to unpack that exact feeling, because social psychologists, they have a name for it. It's called the spotlight effect.
That's right. It's this fascinating psychological bias where we tend to massively overestimate just how much other people are noticing us. You know, the little details about how we look or some minor slip-up we just made.
We think it's huge news.
We really do. And in this deep dive, our mission really is to peel back the layers of this effect. We want to explore what it actually is, maybe touch on why our brains seem wired this way, and most importantly, give you some practical, actionable strategies to help you step out of that, well, that imagined limelight.
Yeah, get rid of the imaginary stage crew.
Exactly. The goal here is to share some knowledge that's hopefully both really liberating, but also, you know, kind of humbling in a good way.
Okay, so we've all felt it, that intense everyone's watching vibe. Let's break it down. What exactly is the spotlight effect at its core? What's happening in our heads?
Well, fundamentally, the spotlight effect is what we call a cognitive bias, and it's an egocentric one, which just means it stems from the fact that, look, we're each the absolute center of our own world, right?
All right, that makes sense.
So this bias makes us overestimate how much attention others are really paying to us. We assume our actions, our appearance, they're as noticeable and important to them as they feel to us.
But they're usually not.
That's the liberating part. They're almost never as focused on us as we are on ourselves. We might be the star of our own internal movie, but we're usually just an extra or maybe even just background scenery in everyone else's.
That's such a helpful way to think about it. I mean, we've all been there. You wear something a bit different, maybe a bold new shirt.
Yeah.
And you're just sure every single person is staring, whispering about your fashion choice. Or, you know, you're giving a talk, you trip over a word.
The worst feeling.
Right. And you replay it in your head like a million times. Everyone clocked it and is judging your public speaking skills forever.
Exactly. Or maybe you're just, 5 minutes late for a meeting and that internal wave of embarrassment washes over you and you think everyone's sitting there judging your timekeeping, your professionalism.
Yeah, you feel like you need to apologize profusely.
Or you make some tiny, insignificant mistake and you honestly believe it's going to be the hot topic of conversation later by the coffee machine. In all those cases, the spotlight effect is just cranking up your self-consciousness way beyond reality. Others probably barely noticed, or if they did, it was just a fleeting thought before they went back to their own concerns.
And the really interesting thing is this isn't just like a gut feeling we have. Researchers have actually tested this, haven't they? Tell us about that famous study, the one that really put this on the map.
Yes. You're talking about the classic work by Thomas Gilovich and his colleagues. It's often called the embarrassing T-shirt experiment. It's quite well known.
Embarrassing T-shirt. Okay, I'm intrigued.
So they had participants put on these, conspicuous T-shirts. Some of them were genuinely designed to be a bit embarrassing. I think one famously had a picture of Barry Manilow on it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that could feel awkward.
Definitely. And then they had these participants walk into a room full of other people. Just imagine doing that, knowing you're wearing, a Barry Manilow shirt.
Yeah, I'm cringing just thinking about it. So what happened? Did everyone notice Barry Manilow? Was the embarrassment justified?
Well, here's the fascinating part. Not really. The results were pretty striking. The people wearing the shirts dramatically overestimated how many people in the room actually noticed it.
How much did they overestimate?
They typically guess that somewhere around, say, 50%, maybe even up to 80% of the people noticed their shirt. But the reality, it was closer to 20%, sometimes even less.
Wow, only 20%. That's a huge gap between what they felt and what actually happened.
A massive gap, and it really highlights the bias.
So why? Why did they get it so wrong? What did the researchers figure out was going on?
Well, it really boils down to that egocentrism we talked about. We're just so acutely aware of ourselves. And here's the kicker. When those same participants were later asked to estimate how many people noticed someone else wearing the same embarrassing T-shirt, like watching a video of it, they got the estimate pretty much spot on.
So when it wasn't them under the imaginary spotlight, their judgment was accurate.
Exactly. It's our own self-focus, our own internal feeling of being observed that inflates how memorable or noticeable we think we are. We kind of project our own internal state onto others, assuming they're processing us with the same intensity we're experiencing ourselves. But they're just not.
That makes so much sense. And thinking bigger picture, does this feeling, this constant sense of being watched, does it have deeper roots? Maybe evolutionary?
It likely does. If you think about our ancestors, early human tribes, belonging to the group wasn't just nice, it was absolutely critical for survival.
Right. Being cast out was basically a death sentence.
Precisely. So our brains probably evolved to be hyper-attuned to how others might perceive us. We needed to constantly monitor for signs of disapproval or potential rejection. That ancient wiring, that deep-seated need for social acceptance, likely still fuels some of our modern social anxieties today, making us feel like we're always on stage, even when the stakes are much, much lower.
Which brings us to social anxiety itself. I imagine there's a strong connection there. If you're already prone to anxiety, this spotlight must feel even more intense.
Oh, absolutely. There's a very strong link. Research consistently shows that people who struggle with social anxiety tend to perceive negative judgments from others much more acutely. They're far more susceptible to this feeling of being perpetually scrutinized.
So the spotlight feels brighter and hotter for them.
Exactly. Their fear of being watched and judged negatively feels incredibly real and intense, and unfortunately, that anxiety itself can sometimes become more noticeable than whatever minor flaw they were worried about in the first place. It can become a bit of a self-fulfilling cycle.
It sounds like the spotlight effect isn't really working alone then. Are there other sort of related psychological quirks or biases that team up with it?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's definitely part of a bigger picture, a whole ecosystem of biases, you could say. One really closely related one is called the illusion of transparency.
Illusion of transparency. What's that?
It's our tendency to overestimate how well other people can actually detect our internal states, our emotions, our thoughts. Like you might be giving that presentation we talked about, feeling incredibly nervous, inside, heart pounding, maybe palms sweating.
Yeah, feeling like it must be totally obvious.
Right, you're convinced everyone can see your anxiety, that it's transparent. But in reality, your colleagues might perceive you as perfectly calm, maybe even confident. They just don't have access to your internal world the way you do.
That's so true. We feel it so strongly, we just assume it's leaking out everywhere. What else plays into this?
Well, then there's the false consensus effect. This is where we tend to overestimate how much other people share our own opinions, attitudes, beliefs, even our behaviors.
So we think everyone thinks like us.
In a way, yes. If we think spilling coffee on our shirt is a major catastrophe, we assume everyone else sees it that way too. We kind of create this imaginary consensus, projecting our own internal judgments and anxieties onto people around us.
Okay, that makes sense too. Is there another piece?
One more that's closely tied in is anchoring and adjustment. Think of it like this. Our own internal feelings, say, intense embarrassment after stumbling, acts as an anchor. It's our starting point because it's so vivid to us.
Right. Feels like a 10 out of 10 embarrassment.
Exactly. But then we fail to sufficiently adjust that feeling downwards to account for the fact that other people aren't experiencing our internal state. They don't have that anchor. They might have noticed the stumble, maybe registered it as a 1 or 2 on their scale and moved on. We stay anchored to our own intense feeling.
We're stuck on our own internal emotional volume knob, assuming everyone else's has turned out just as high.
That's a perfect analogy. We're viewing the world through this incredibly focused, self-aware lens and forget that everyone else is looking through their own distinct lens focused primarily on their world.
So the big takeaway here, the really freeing part for you listening, is that most people are just, well, they're too busy worrying about their own stuff, their own anxieties, their own to-do lists, their own embarrassing T-shirts, maybe.
Exactly. They simply don't have the mental bandwidth to devote that much attention to what a stranger is wearing or a colleague's tiny slip-up.
Seriously, just think about it for a second. When was the last time you spent more than, 3 seconds really analyzing someone else's minor mistake or outfit choice?
No.
Unless it was truly outrageous, you probably didn't give it much thought, right?
It's pretty rare. And that's the comforting reality, that spotlight you feel. More often than not, you're the one holding it, pointing it right at yourself.
Okay, so understanding this is one thing, but living with it, actually changing that feeling, that's the key. What can we actually do about it? How do we step out of that imaginary light? What are the practical strategies?
Right, because understanding is great, but action is better. The first strategy is really about tackling those thoughts head on. It involves reframing your negative thoughts, specifically the ones about being watched or judged.
So catching that thought in the act.
Precisely. When your brain yells, "Oh no, everyone saw that," or "They definitely think my idea is stupid," you consciously challenge it. Reframe it. Maybe think, okay, my self-focus is probably exaggerating this. Most people are likely focused on their own thing. Or even if someone noticed, it's just a fleeting moment, not some permanent judgment. This kind of cognitive reframing has been shown to really help reduce anxiety, especially in performance situations.
Actively talking back to that critical inner voice. I like that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the illusion of transparency earlier. How can knowing about that help as a strategy?
That's the second strategy. Actively consider the illusion of transparency. When you feel completely exposed, like everyone must know you're nervous or bored or whatever it is, remind yourself consciously, wait, the science says people are actually pretty bad at reading my internal state.
Remember, they can't see inside your head.
Exactly. If you're stuck in a dull conversation thinking, oh God, they can totally tell I'm bored out of my mind, just remember, they probably can't. They're likely focused on what they're saying or thinking. Just knowing this, internalizing it, can take so much pressure off. It gives you permission to just be.
Okay, strategy 3 involves shifting perspective, right?
Yes. Strategy number 3 is simple but powerful. Take someone else's perspective. Try to step outside of your own head and see the situation as an observer or even as the other person involved. We tend to be much harsher critics of ourselves than we are of others.
So flip the script.
Kind of. Imagine you did spill that drink on your shirt.
Yeah.
Instead of the usual, everyone thinks I'm such a klutz. Try thinking, okay, if I saw someone else spill their drink, what would I actually think? Would I judge them harshly? Or would I maybe feel a flicker of sympathy, notice it for 2 seconds, and then completely forget about it?
Probably the latter.
Almost certainly. Research actually shows that mentally viewing an embarrassing event from a third-person perspective significantly dials down the embarrassment. It breaks that intense self-focus.
And number 4 is about mindfulness, which comes up a lot in managing our thoughts. How does that apply here?
Mindfulness, or practicing present moment awareness, is incredibly helpful for reducing that egocentrism. It helps you gain a more accurate view of social situations. And it doesn't require hours of meditation. Even short practices like 5 or 10 minutes a day can make a difference.
How does it work in the moment, say, if you make a mistake?
Well, let's say you drop your pen during a meeting. Instead of spiraling into, everyone saw how clumsy, a mindful approach might involve noticing the thought and the feeling, but sort of observing it from a slight distance. Maybe thinking, okay, the pen dropped, there's a feeling of embarrassment rising. Is anyone actually reacting? Often you'll find that externally, nothing much happened. Mindfulness helps you observe your internal reaction without automatically assuming it reflects external reality.
Becoming aware of the feeling without getting swept away by it.
Okay, strategy 5 feels a bit different. It's about embracing yourself.
It really is. Strategy 5 is to recognize the positives of being uniquely you. So much of the spotlight effect is driven by this fear of not fitting in, of being judged for being different. But our unique qualities are often our strengths.
So focusing on the good stuff.
Yes, consciously. Take time to identify your strengths. Maybe set an intention for self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a friend. Surround yourself with people who genuinely appreciate you for who you are. Even something simple like practicing gratitude for your body, just looking in the mirror and thanking it for carrying you through the day, can shift your focus away from perceived flaws and reduce that need for external approval.
That feels really important. And the last one, strategy 6, this is for when things feel more serious, right? Yes. If this feeling of being constantly judged is really persistent, if it's causing significant distress or interfering with your life, maybe leading to avoiding social situations, then seeking professional support is a really valuable step.
What kind of support helps?
Well, therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, are excellent. They directly help you identify and challenge the negative thought patterns that fuel the spotlight effect and social anxiety. There's also neurofeedback, which can help train your brain towards calmer states, and exposure therapy, which involves gradually facing feared situations to learn that the anticipated negative judgment usually doesn't happen or isn't as bad as feared. These are powerful tools if the self-help strategies aren't quite enough.
It's good to know those options are there. You know, there's this great little real-life story that just perfectly captures how little people often notice.
Oh, yeah.
It's about this young guy, maybe 22 or so.
Yeah.
He had this idea for a prank, buying bras to throw at his friend who was DJing like they're rock stars or something.
Okay, a bit silly, but I can picture it.
So he goes into this big, busy department store, walks all the way to the lingerie section, picks out the cheapest bras he can find, walks back through the entire store, gets in line, waits, pays for them. The whole time, he's probably feeling super awkward, right?
You'd think so. Buying bras as a young guy probably felt like all eyes were on him.
Exactly. But guess what? Not one single person gave him a weird look. Nobody seemed to notice or care. Even the cashier just rang him up, totally deadpan. Didn't blink an eye.
Wow. That really does drive it home, doesn't it? People are just not paying that much attention.
It really does. So, again, think about it honestly. How often do you really notice, let alone remember, the minor details of what other people are doing or wearing? Unless it's something truly out there, it barely registers, does it?
Hardly ever. And that right there is the liberating truth behind understanding the spotlight effect.
And it's not that people don't care about you, it's just they're busy caring about themselves.
Precisely. So to sum up, the spotlight effect is this really common cognitive bias, basically a trick our self-focused brains play on us. But once you understand where it comes from, that mix of egocentrism and maybe some old evolutionary wiring, and you have these practical strategies we talked about, you really can start to feel more comfortable, more confident, less like you're constantly being watched.
And I think the single most important piece of wisdom to take away from all this is exactly what the title says. You are just not as noticed or, frankly, as important in other people's moment-to-moment lives as you think you are. And that's not meant as an insult at all. It's actually incredibly freeing when you really let that sink in.
It truly is. So the question we want to leave you with is this. What does knowing this actually mean for you? If you accept that fewer people are scrutinizing your perceived flaws or mistakes than your brain tells you, well, what does that open up for you? What risks might you be a bit more willing to take now? What passions could you pursue more freely? What ideas might you share, knowing that imaginary spotlight is maybe not plugged in after all?